Today we are going to begin to study the memorandum which was written by Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, and it was titled as Grievances of the Scheduled Castes. And this memorandum was submitted to the Governor General, who was the highest office in India at that time, in the British India. That was the highest office. And Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar submitted this memorandum to the Governor General on 29th October 1942. And what I thought that, when I was thinking about Nikhil and I was discussing about what we should study or read in our virtual reading groups. The idea was to look into various speeches of Babasaheb Ambedkar, and when we were thinking about it, this particular memorandum came out. And then I was thinking that, we can use this memorandum to understand the what is called the policy analysis from the Ambedkarite perspective. And we know Babasaheb Ambedkar in many of his roles, like an economist, as a person who brought back Buddhism in India, as a great social reformer, as somebody who had written on sociology, and he had done a lot on a lot of research. He had 2 research degrees, as we know, from the universities, the best universities of the world. And he, one of his aspects that I think needs to be brought out now is Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar as a policy analyst. And policy analysis is a very vibrant field of knowledge, and considered to be one of the very important areas where people are undertaking studies, and one of the very important courses in the Western universities, at the master's level and PhD level, just compared with MBAs from any reputed institutes. So policy analysis has emerged as a very important field in the world today, because this field brings a radical change in the lives of the people. It is policy analysis, nothing but a tool for social economic development of the society. So, what are the various policy options? What are the problems facing the community? How we can solve the problems, through the government intervention? But there are the things which only the government can do. So, this is a very broad sort of a subject, and it's an interdisciplinary subject. If anybody wants to become a policy analyst, they have to study economics, sociology, political science, mathematics, because you have to model various policy options. And, and the policies are in different domains, like, for example, economic policies, social policies, scientific policies, you name it. And the policy intervention, is involved. And therefore, it's a very vibrant domain of knowledge that has emerged, which is interdisciplinary nature, where you have to read a lot of things, and, a lot of disciplines, and also, understand modeling, and create various policy options. Above all, one needs to be a good writer, because, if we have a best analysis of policy, but if we cannot communicate it to other people as to what kind of a changes you want, what kind of a policy changes you need. So another area that's very important when it comes to the policy analysis is a skill of writing, the various policy options, various policy, models. And therefore, it is said that a policy analyst must have a very good hold of language through which they can communicate. And when you have a clarity over policy and policy analysis, then what you do next step is policy advocacy, because then you need to get the things done. You need to get the policy, implemented. So policy implementation, that needs policy advocacy. And without advocacy, a lot of things cannot be done, they cannot be implemented. And therefore, if we venture into the area called, politics. So what I'm going to do to give you a brief idea before we commence our reading, about what constitute the policy. I prepared a small presentation, and I'm just going to take the few slides so that you will get some idea of what we are talking about. Okay. So as I made it clear in the beginning that is the screen visible?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So just to give you an idea, this is the dimension that we will be exploring through this reading of Babasaheb Ambedkar as a policy analyst, and there are many documents by which we can analyze the way Babasaheb's mind worked. We know certainly how Babasaheb's legal mind worked, looking at various drafts that are available today. We know how the Babasaheb's mind as an economist worked. And here we are going to look at how Babasaheb's mind worked as a policy analyst. So, what is a policy analysis? A lot of people have a different views, but one of the views is that a community is driven by market and government. And the concept of the government or politics came from the word police, which was a word for a city-state, from which the words like politics and policy is determined. And, the market is considered to be the great leveler according to the capitalist model of the society. But the better model, as we know, is the model of a democracy and the democratic form of the society. And we know that Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar has envisioned a democratic society, and he has clearly defined what constitutes a democracy. And we have seen in the previous reading classes as to what constitutes democracy very clearly in terms of liberty, equality, fraternity, equity, welfare, dignity, and justice. So this is just a small background from which we are going to read. Public policy is considered to be a very rational sort of discipline. And generally, it is considered that it's based on three pillars, a model of reasoning, because, the policy analysis is about solving the problems of facing in different domains like environmental policy or social policy or economic policy or a scientific policy, you name it. And you can have a policy for that, because you cannot escape the government or the role of the government. And a model of the society, as to what kind of a model of a society that a particular society has agreed to aspire. And in case of a country, we have a clearly laid model of a society that is envisioned in the Constitution of India as to based on justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity, dignity, and integrity of the country. And then a model of policy making itself, because you need a legislative body, you need an executive body to implement those policies, and of course we need what is called the judiciary, and then all different organs of the government therein, all different government departments, the central government, state government, local government. So the domain of the policy analysis is a very vast, as we can see. So there is a wonderful book which I shared in the group, which is written by Eugene Baltach, and the book is titled as a practical guide for policy analysis, the Eightfold Path to more effective problem solving. So the policy analysis is about the problem solving, the problems and the solutions, which we are going to see when we are going to read Babasaheb's this very wonderful memorandum. And it has like 8 steps. The step 1 is about defining the problem, identifying the problem, and then assembling the evidence as to there is a problem, isn't it? So assembling evidence is a very rigorous process. So if you say that there is some problem, then how do you say that there is a problem? So you need evidences of that. And then you need to have the authenticate sources of those evidences, which we are going to look at in this memorandum. And it's called, we can call it a policy memo. So after the end result of any policy analysis is a policy memo that is submitted to the government, that is submitted to the legislative bodies, or that is used by the public as an advocacy tool. So you have to have a very robust analysis for that. And Professor Eugene Bardach has suggested a wonderful model, which you can read in the book that I have shared in the group. So defining the problem, assembling some evidence, and then construct the alternatives, because there are a lot of alternatives, solutions for a particular problem. And we are going to look into this as to how many solutions can be there. And we have to select the criteria as to which is the better, alternative. For example, whether it promotes equality, liberty, or equity, or efficiency. A lot of people talk about the efficiency of a particular policy. And so, what are the criteria by which we are going to judge all the alternatives that are put in before us after this rigorous analysis, and then project the outcomes of the particular policy option, isn't it? So there are, for example, option A, option B, option C, dealing with a particular problem. Then, we rigorously analyze it on the basis of the criteria. There are different criterias, and like liberty, equality, fraternity, justice, ethics, and whatnot. And then we project the various outcomes of the various policy options, and then we see the trade-off as to which will be the best option available in that situation. Then we take a decision and then tell your story, which means you write a policy memo, because the policy memo is the ultimate result of the policy analysis. And this policy memo that we are going to study today, read today, has all these elements. So I would request all of you to bear this model eightfold path in your mind. And there is a ninth stage, which is about implementation, which is about advocacy of the policy, which is about making it work. So this slide will make it clear. So there are like 8 steps in the policy analytical path: defining the problem, assemble evidence, construct the alternatives. That can be termed as describing how the world is, how that particular problem is, isn't it? And then select the criteria, project the outcomes, confront the trade-off. That is describing the problem, how the world could be, and then describe how the world should be. And the last step, 9th step, is to make it work. So this is a wonderful reading, which we are going to embark upon in the classes. So we can read Babasaheb's writing and speeches as policy analysis. So we are going to begin to read that, and I'm not going to now. I'm going to stop sharing the screen, and we will put up on the screen the memorandum or policy memo that Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar submitted to the Governor General, and we will begin our exploration. But I would request all of you to keep these 8 steps in your mind. It doesn't matter whether you remember them at this stage or not. They are helpful indicators to understand this policy memo that we are going to study. So I request Nikhil to please share the screen.
Sure, sir. So, can you give me the access for the same?
Yeah. Wait. Sorry. Okay. Great. So just to give this is how the booklet was created, and as you can see, memorandum, and Babasaheb Ambedkar has written confidential, not circulation. So it was not meant for the public circulation. And the memo, the policy memorandum, was titled as grievances of the scheduled castes, which means the problems of the scheduled caste, isn't it? And see, whenever we dropped a policy memo, it's very important to have a clear heading as to what does it mean. So looking at this words, a few words here, we can at once know what is it all about. So this policy memo is all about grievances of the scheduled castes. Now Babasaheb Ambedkar has put his title, which he doesn't do all the time, but here it's very important to do it, because in order to show who is submitting the policy memo. So the Honorable Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, and his degrees, MA, PhD, DSc, Bar at Law, and he is a member of the Governor General's Executive Council. So he is a very rare of the persons that time to be a part of the government of the British India, and he was a member of the Governor General's Executive Council. Now, if we go down this memorandum, Nikhil, can you scroll down a little bit? So this memorandum was submitted by Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar to His Excellency the Governor General. who was like the president of India that time, or prime minister, a very powerful man, like a king of the country. So Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar has submitted this memorandum to His Excellency, the Governor General, and the date is 29th October 1942. Okay, so you see, so whenever we draft any policy memo, this is a very essential information that there has to be included, that at the first glance, it's about problems of the scheduled caste, grievances of the scheduled caste, very clear. And who is sending it? So it can be a person, it can be a group of advocacy group, policy advocacy group, and to whom it is submitted along with the date. So this is small information, very relevant to understand the policy memo. Okay, scroll down a little bit. Now this is this is a reprint. So let's begin to read it.
Okay, so I'll begin to read now. Grievances of the Scheduled Caste. Introduction. This memorandum sets out the grievances of the Scheduled Caste in British India and suggests the measures that are necessary for readdressing them. In listing the grievances, I have taken note of such grievances only as the central government alone can remedy.
Okay. You see, this is a beginning of a memorandum, and it's about grievances of the scheduled caste, means the problems of the scheduled caste, and suggests the measures. So it also suggests the solutions. Okay, now you understand the thought process here of Babasaheb Ambedkar. On one hand, he's talking about the problems or the grievances of the scheduled caste, and in the very next line, he's talking about the measures that are necessary for redressing them. And he knows that all these grievances can be addressed by the central government. So he's submitting the memorandum to the central government. He's not submitting the memorandum to the provincial government or the state governments. He's submitting it to the central government. So for the today's context, we know that there are certain domains where the central government can make the policies and the laws, and there are domains where the state governments can make the laws. So whenever we are writing a policy memo about any issue, we should know whether that particular authority has a competence or authorized to enact the policy in that particular domain. Okay, so we begin to understand the thought process. Like, for example, education. So if we are asking for education today, it's in the state list. It's not in the central government list. Or, for example, policing, it's in the state government list, isn't it? But mines or other domains, if there is a mining policy, we have to write to the central government, right? Okay, please go
on. The grievances listed.
Okay, let me move. Okay, yeah.
The grievances listed in this memorandum are divided into three categories: political, educational, and third is other grievances, and are discussed separately. Part 1 deals with political grievances, Part 2 with educational grievances, and Part 3 with other grievances. To this, I have added Part 4, in which I have ventured to speak of the duty which every government must assume towards those who are living in a life of perpetual distress, in the hope that the government of India will recognize it and do what they are bound to do to the scheduled castes. I have thought it advisable to give below a table divided into parts. This table, it will be seen, serves two purposes. It gives at the start the contents of this memorandum, and secondly, it helps to convey at the outset a general idea of what these grievances are. Part 1, political grievances.
So you see, whenever we draft a memo or a policy memo, it's very important to summarize in the beginning, executive summary of what it is. And if you look at it in a very few paragraphs, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar has captured what he wants to do with this, isn't it? So political grievances, educational grievances, and other grievances. And he's saying that he's also submitting a note as to the duty of the government towards those who are in the perpetual distress. And so the table of content is a very important thing in any policy memo, isn't it? And here Babasaheb Ambedkar very clearly mentions as to what constitute this policy memo. So at a glance, in single one, you imagine a page. In one page, you can get an idea as to what Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar was trying to get it at. right? So you see, these are a lot of learnings from these 2 pages as to how we should be, working towards making the policy or policy memos. Okay, Nikhil.
Yeah. I have thought it advisable to give below a table divided into parts. This table, it will be seen, serves two purposes. It gives at the start the contents of this memorandum, and secondly, it helps to convey at the outset a general idea of what these grievances are. Part 1, Political Grievances. First, inadequate representation in the central legislature. Second, inadequate representation in the central executive. Third, absence of representation in the public services. Fourth, absence of representation on the Federal Public Services Commission.
Okay. You see, these statements look, very simple. But if you understand, you see, this is a problem statement. At the same time, there is a solution. Writing a statement like this, inadequate representation in the central legislation. Also, it's stating a problem, but at the same time, it's pointing out to the solution that there should be adequate representation in the central government legislation. You see, this is a genius of the narration, how you put across the idea, isn't it? So when Babasaheb Ambedkar is talking about political grievances, he's talking about the 4 areas. And in the first area, he's saying that there is an inadequate representation in the central legislation. So the problem statement itself is showing the way towards the solution. Then inadequate representation in the central executive. Absence, he's saying, see, he's not saying inadequate representation in the public service. He's saying absence of representation. There is no representation, absence in the public service. Absence of representation on the Federal Public Services Commission. You see, every single word here has been included with a lot of thinking. Though it takes a few minutes for us to read, but it might have taken a lot of time for Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar to put every single word here. Stating the problem and a possible solution, resolution of that solution is included in these particular 4 statements, right? So you see, if anybody wants to say anything, please feel free. My aim is to just bring out some of the principles of the policy analysis by way of studying this policy memo drafted by Babasaheb Ambedkar. So, the problem is stated, but at the same time, there is a hope, there is a direction towards which it can be resolved, right? So, you're all free to comment upon any time. If not, then I request Nikhil to go ahead. Nikhil, please go ahead.
Yeah. Part 2, Educational Grievances. Fifth, want of aid for university and for advanced education. Sixth, want of facilities for technical training. Part 3, Other Grievances. Seventh, untouchables and government publicity. Eighth, untouchables and government contracts.
Okay.
Part 4, yeah.
Okay, part 4, please read.
Part 4, Duty of Government towards distressed people.
Okay. Now you see, when Babasaheb Ambedkar has drafted part 2, educational grievances, in the statement itself, in the statement of the problem, there is a solution inbuilt. What is it? Want of aid for university and for advanced education. So he's not asking aid for the elementary school, because that's not the domain of the central government. So he's asking for the aid for university and for advanced education, for foreign education. Then he's asking want of facilities for technical training, isn't it? And in the other grievances, he's not using the word scheduled caste. He's making it more impactful by using the word untouchables and the government publicity. Very new domain. And eighth, very important, untouchables and the government contracts. Because in terms of the contracts, the government is the highest, contracting party in any country. So there is, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar is saying that, the government contracts and untouchable, there is a need of a change in the policy to bring in a new policy and the duty of the government towards distressed people. So that's a small write-up that Babasaheb Ambedkar has included here. So you begin to get an idea looking just at the first page of the policy memo as to how deep Babasaheb Ambedkar goes, how meticulous he is in using a single word, how he is stating the problem and pointing out to the resolution of that problem by the way of stating the problem so clearly. So there is a lot in the content of this policy memo, right?
Right.
Jai Bhim, sir.
JVM Dhara, any comment from you, Dhara?
Sir, Babasaheb must have studied extensively to have this clear expression and may have done research and analysis and comparative
Yes.
studies.
Yes. You see, Dhara, this is like a crash course in policy analysis. And
Yes,
I hope that at the end of this reading, you will get a lot of ideas. So, I would ideally think that, each of you should be able to draft a policy memo in certain areas like reservation policy or, many areas, all the domains, scientific policy, environmental policy, isn't it?
But sir, how to have this kind of expression, clear words and...
So the more you read, the more you study, the more you research,
Yes,
and it is not going to come in a day.
yes.
This is from somebody who had two PhD degree, research degrees from the best university in the world.
Yes,
But you begin to see how Babasaheb's mind worked, right?
right.
Great. Anyone has anything to say? If not, Nikhil, please go further.
Sure. So we'll start with part 1, political grievances. First, inadequate representation in the central legislature. As at present constituted, the Central Assembly consists of 141 members. Of these, 102 are elected and 39 nominated. Of the nominated members, 19 are non-officials and 20 are officials. Of this total of 141, there are 2 who belong to the scheduled caste. Consider as against this the population of the scheduled caste. The census in India has become a political affair, and the Hindus, Muslims, and the Sikhs have been attempting to cook up the census so as to show a rise in their numbers. This is done mostly at the cost of the untouchables. It is therefore difficult to get a correct figure of their population. Whatever estimate the census gives, it is bound to be an underestimate. However, taking the figure of 40 millions, which is the figure given in the census of 1940, there can be no doubt that the representation of the scheduled castes in the central legislature is ridiculously low.
Okay. Now you see, we are looking at the first, political grievance, part 1, and out in that, the subsection inadequate representation in the central legislation. So your note policy memo should be very clearly, arranged. And as I said, that whatever problems you talk about, you should have evidence. And here you look at it in the first paragraph, Babasaheb Ambedkar gives an evidence as to how is the inadequate representation in the central legislature. Okay. And when he's doing that, he's bringing the number. Babasaheb Ambedkar was a man of statistics. He was a quantitative man. If you look at his books, it filled with data. And he was somebody who was hunting data all the time. Facts, isn't it? And this is how we should be doing, hunting for the facts, hunting for the truth, hunting for the data, isn't it? So you see very clearly, beautifully, in a paragraph. This is a very contemporary paragraph, if you look at it carefully. He is talking about how many seats there, how many nominated, how many elected. And he's saying that out of total 141, only 2 belongs to the scheduled castes. And he says that in the assembly of 141 members, both elected and nominated, there are only 2 members from the scheduled caste. And he says that the representation is not adequate. And he talks about the population of the scheduled caste. And then he makes a very important statement. He says that, the census in India has become a political affair. How true it is even today. Isn't it? Even today, if you look at the census, which is going to come, or which is going to be now conducted. And we know that the caste-based census has become such an important issue in today's politics. So Babasaheb Ambedkar is very, visionary. He says the census in India has become political affair, and Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs, they have been attempting to cook up the census so as to show a rise in their numbers. Nobody knows how many members belong to how many classes in this country. Even today, we rely on the very old data today, and this is done mostly at the cost of the untouchables. So the figure 40 million, which is given by 1914, remember the year 1940, because this memo was submitted in 1942. So the data that Babasaheb Ambedkar submitted is very new. It's very fresh data, isn't it? And he's saying that, though it is underestimated, I am using the government figure. Now, when we talk about the contemporary time, we have the census data. At the same time, we have what is called the NSSO data. And the NSSO data gives a very different figure of the population of the scheduled caste, almost 20%, and the 9% of the scheduled tribes. And the census data gives a very different figure. So the data source is very important. And in this case, if we are doing some kind of a policy analysis, we should have the data like census data. We should have, the reports of the government. We should have complete availability of the various surveys that the government conducts, everything. So you understand how Babasaheb Ambedkar is creating the evidence of the problem that he has been stating here, right? So then the conclusion of this data analysis is this, that the representation of the scheduled caste in the central legislature is ridiculously low. See the use of the word ridiculously low. Right? So anything from anybody on this paragraph? Anybody has any comment or any reflection on this before we move on further? Okay, we move on further.
To make this position clear, I give below two tables which have a bearing on this question. Table number 1, population in British India.
Okay, we can take a pause here and look at this table for some time. Okay, so this is population according to 1941. So you can see here the Hindus constitute about 50% of the total population. That's the undivided India. Okay, the British India. So the population of the Hindus that time is 50%, the Muslims 23%, and scheduled caste 13.5%, tribal 5.7%, Sikhs 1.3%, Indian Christians 1.0%. So according to, if you rank them according to the population, the scheduled caste make up the third largest group, right? So you see data, very important. Statistics, very important. Census, very important. Facts, very important. Figures, very important in policy analysis. And this is how Babasaheb Ambedkar is demonstrating that we should rely on the numbers, on the facts. Even if, even this data is not correct, as Babasaheb Ambedkar has shown in the first paragraph. But still, we have to have something. Okay? So please go on.
So this is table number 1. This is table number 2.
Okay, look at the table number 2. Communal composition of the Central Assembly. Now, what is it? You see the elected member, nominated member. Among the nominated member, there are two categories: non-official members, official members, and total including official members and the total excluding official members. So look at the last column, column number 6. So the Hindus are, 60% represent, 49%. Muslims, 33%. And the Sikhs, 3.3%. Parsis, 2.4%. Europeans, 7.4%. And there are no scheduled castes. You see how it is. So by the analysis of data, by the analysis of the data available by, by the Central Assembly and the census, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar is putting before us the bare facts, saying that the scheduled caste do not have the adequate representation in the central legislation. I would think that, if anybody has anything to comment upon, they are welcome. You appreciate the method, with the way Babasaheb Ambedkar uses the data to prove his point. He has created the evidence of his statement saying that the scheduled caste doesn't have the adequate representation compared to the other communities. They have a huge representation.
Yes. Sometimes government what release data is not correct, right? It is what government wants to release, but still it can be used.
Yeah. Dhara, you made a very important point, because today a lot of these databases are being destroyed.
Yes.
We cannot find adequate data to analyze. And if there is no data, if there is no numbers, how we are going to do the policy analysis?
In the RTI also, they are not releasing the number.
Yes. So some of the research scholar can go and do their own findings, right? They can do
Yes.
their own research.
Yes.
Okay, we go on.
This table throws a flood of light on the extent of representation which the different communities in the central legislature have at present. Figures in column 5 give the total representation each community has, with the percentage ratio for some of them. I do not, however, wish to lay stress on them. They include figure for nominated officials. They are intended primarily to represent government and not the communities to whom they belong. Secondly, the communal composition of the nominated official block is variable and not fixed. But I do wish to invite attention to figures in other columns. I'll begin with column 6. It gives the total extent of the representation which different communities have secured through election as well as nomination. More striking are the figures given in column 3. It shows that the Hindus have been allowed 54.9 by election. In addition, they are given 21% out of the quota reserved for nomination. The Muslims have got 33.5% by election. This is great. This is great deal in excess of what they are entitled to on the basis of their population. In addition, they are allowed the benefit of 37% out of the quota reserved for nomination. The same is the case with the Sikhs and the Parsis. Both of them have representation through election much beyond what their numbers would justify. Yet each is allowed to have the benefit of 10.5% out of the quota for nomination. As against this, there is the naked fact that the scheduled caste, who has number 40 millions and who form the third largest community in India, have no SCAT by election
No seat.
and only one by nomination.
Okay. So
No
you
seat
see,
by election and only one by nomination.
so Babasaheb Ambedkar has summarized the two tables that he has provided in this policy memo. And he has clearly shows that the Hindus are overly represented. Same is the case with the Muslims and the Parsis and the Sikhs, whose population is not, compared to the population of the scheduled caste, is not substantial. Despite of that, they are overrepresented. And as far as the scheduled caste, who are 40 million in number, they have third largest community in India, have no seat by election and only one by nomination. So in a very pathetic situation of the representation. And he says, uses the word the naked fact. Isn't it? You see the words used by Babasaheb Ambedkar, they are very important for us to understand how, Babasaheb Ambedkar does all this policy analysis, right? So there is a lesson for us as to how we can begin to understand the statistics and prove our point. So anybody has anything to say on this?
Sir, schedule caste number 40 millions, but they are very scattered. So in this type of election, it is very difficult to have elect a person from scheduled caste.
Yes.
Not
Yes,
if,
Dara. So Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar elsewhere has suggested various options, policy options, as to how they can be truly represented. And those
Yes.
options were not accepted.
yes,
Right? So he has given proportionate representation system, then weightage system, double elections, and so on and so forth, because he wanted to have the real representation for, but that's an entirely different topic.
yes,
Okay. But yes, in the scheme of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, we can find very many options that Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar gave as to how the representation can be adequate and proper.
yes.
Okay, we move on.
Given these facts, two comments became quite in order. In the first place, the legislature is quite an unbalanced body. It suffers from both the evils from overrepresentation of some communities and underrepresentation of other communities. The evil exists in its most aggravated form, for the overrepresentation is of communities which are strong and powerful, and the underrepresentation is of communities which are weak and poor. The second comment relates to the wrong use of the power of nomination. The power of nomination was reserved under the Constitution to rectify the inequalities of representation. To put it in different language, it was intended to give these communities which did not secure enough representation by election sufficient representation through nomination. There is
Yes, we stay on that paragraph because there is a lot of thing there. You see, in this paragraph, if you read the language, the way Babasaheb Ambedkar has constructed, it's a master way of bringing the truth out. So he says that there are two comments which I would like to make here. The first is the legislature is an unbalanced body. Even today, if we look at the Indian Parliament, it's unbalanced. It's an unbalanced body. In this case, how it is in the British time of the British India, he says that over representation of the some communities and under representation of other communities. Very beautiful sentence, isn't it? And then he says that why it's an evil, because those communities which are overly represented are already strong and powerful, and those communities which are underrepresented are weak and poor. So you imagine how the gravity of the problem, isn't it? It's a very grave problem. And he says that the wrong use of nomination, because the way people are nominated, they are not nominated properly. So those who were promised the nomination, they have not representation, they are not represented in the sufficient number. So if they couldn't get the sufficient number by election, it was supposed to be by nomination, they will get the sufficient number, but even that was not done. That is not done. Right? Okay. Carry on.
There is no principle which seems to govern either the election or the nomination in so far as they relate to the composition of the central legislature. If at all there is any principle, it is to give Peter more than Paul and then to rob Paul, who has almost nothing, to enrich Peter, who has almost everything.
So, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar will always talk about the principle. What is the underlying principle? Why it is done? And this paragraph indicates, and the master use of the language. Babasaheb Ambedkar is saying that there is no principle, but if there is any principle, he is not stating that principle in a very arcane philosophical language. He is stating that principle in a very mundane way. All of us can understand, the way Babasaheb Ambedkar has phrased it. If at all there is any principle, it is to give Peter more than Paul, and then rob Paul, who has almost nothing, to enrich Peter, who has almost everything. It's a very genius at play. The language at the best use. at the optimal use to communicate, the grievances, right? Nikhil, if it is too much for you to read because you are not well, would anybody like to volunteer to read further paragraphs?
Sir, I can read.
Okay, Dhara, please read. Nikhil, you give your throat a little rest, okay?
Sure, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
5. There is no justification for so grave a wrong done to the scheduled caste in the matter of representation in a legislature in which the Muslims and the Hindus are waging a war against each other for rights and privileges, and in which both are careful not to lose anything to a third party like the scheduled caste. What support can a single representative of the scheduled caste in a house of 1 for 1 get in his right for the rights of the scheduled caste? It was the view of the South Borough Committee, on the recommendations of which the present structure of the central legislature is reared, that the nominated officials may be expected to bear in mind the interest of the scheduled caste. It is a matter of some considerable interest that the then government of India refused to accept this view. In their dispatch on the report of the South Borough Committee, the government of India said,
Nikhil.
but
Hmm.
but that arrangement is not in our opinion what the Montagu-Chelmsford report on reforms aims at. The authors stated that the depressed classes should also learn the lesson of self-protection. It is surely fanciful to hope that this result can be expected from including a single member of the community in an assembly where there are 60 to 90 caste Hindus. To make good the principles of paras 151, 152, and 155 of the report, we must treat the outcast more generously. Unfortunately, no generosity was shown by the government of the India to the scheduled caste in making its proposal for the composition of the Central Legislative Assembly. They gave them 1 seat by nomination, and it has continued to be one since 1921.
Okay, so let's go on the top of the paragraph. Nikhil. Okay, so this paragraph number 4 is taking the case further, bringing out the evidence and the result of that. So what is the result of that? Because the Hindus and the Muslims are at war with each other for their rights and privileges, and in which both are careful not to lose anything to a third party like scheduled caste. And that has been the case in the Indian politics of the time. There were only two parties, the Hindus and the Muslims. The scheduled caste, the third largest bloc, was nowhere. And what one person can do in the assembly of 141. That's what the case. And South Borough Commission is the first intervention of Babasaheb Ambedkar. He made in the South Borough Commission as a result of his memorandum submitted to the South Borough Commission. The scheduled caste won certain representation. But it is said in the South Borough Commission that they would try to address the grievances of the scheduled caste by providing them more representation through nomination. But as Babasaheb Ambedkar is putting forth here, it was not done in for the last 20 years, that in the central legislature, there was only one representation of the scheduled caste, and that too by nomination. You see how Babasaheb Ambedkar has been putting up the case, bringing the facts together, and presenting it to the people here. So you begin to get an idea as to how Babasaheb Ambedkar is making a case that the British government, the central government, has not done much to bring the proper representation of the scheduled caste in the central legislation. For last 20 years, there was only one representation, though the government has promised through the Southborough Commission, Southborough report, that they will give the more representation by the way of nomination to the scheduled caste. And the Southborough Commission was a document on which the 1919 Act came into being, and that was considered the first Government of India Act, which started giving a power, delegating power to the Indians. So at this stage, anybody would like to say anything, comment upon anything? If not, then we go further.
Six. The result of this meager representation has been quite deplorable. A single representative of the scheduled caste in the assembly of 1 for 1 cannot but feel the utter helplessness of his position. He has to contend against a vast volume of anti-scheduled caste prejudices arising from the Hindu side of the house. He cannot depend upon the support either of the Muslim bloc, who are lighting their battle to advance their interest, nor can he depend upon the official bloc, which has been more careful to preserve its good relation with the major Hindu and Muslim blocs than to support the just interest of the scheduled caste. It is not even possible for the single and solitary representative of the scheduled caste in the assembly to ventilate the grievances of the scheduled caste. I am informed that under the rules made by the President of the Legislative Assembly, the President gives the first chance to speak to those honorable members who belong to a recognized party. I also understand that the President does not recognize a party unless it has the minimum strength of 10 members. This means that ordinarily the representative of the scheduled caste has no chance of speaking in the House unless he chooses to join a party. For a representative of a scheduled caste to be faced with this kind of situation is not very happy thing. To join a party means for him to subordinate the interest of the scheduled caste to that of a party, the principles and interest of which may be quite inconsistent with the principles and interest of the scheduled caste. On the other hand, not to join a party means to lose altogether the right to speak. If one may refer to what happened in the Assembly session September 1942, in the debate that took place on the present political situation in India, the Honorable Rao Bahadur and Shivraj, the representative of the scheduled caste in the Central Assembly, found it difficult to obtain a chance to speak on behalf of the scheduled caste. Although 5 or 6 Muslim members could easily speak for the Muslims. 7. It is therefore greatly necessary that the representation of the scheduled caste in the assembly should be augmented. Of course, this can be done only when vacancies occur in nominated non-official seats. When they do occur, justice requires that such vacancies should go to increase the representation of the scheduled caste in the assembly. To inadequate representation.
Beautiful. We take a pause here and we go back. So you see, to look at this particular policy memo, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar begins with this memo with a table of content. And in the table of content, he makes it clear as to how and what he would like to do through this policy memo, address the grievances of the scheduled caste. And he says that, this pertains to the central legislature. It has nothing to do with the provincial government, only to the central government, or in today's parlance, union government. And then he builds up a case that there are political grievances, there are educational grievances, and there are other grievances. And in the political grievances, he's talking about the inadequacy of the representation in the central legislature, central executive. And then he talks about absence of representation in the public service and the absence of representation on the Federal Public Services Commission, like UPSC today. And then he goes on talking about the first part of the political grievance, the grievances, inadequate representation in the central legislature. And there he builds a case by the way of facts, by the way of census, by the way of the analysis of the data. And then he proves beyond doubt that there is no adequate representation in the Assembly of 141. There is only one member that is nominated, and in the Assembly of 141. And then he says that how the government of India has not taken into consideration the suggestions or the recommendation by the Southborough Commission. And he says that how it makes it very difficult for the hello.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yeah. So, how it makes it difficult for the scheduled caste member to have their own voice. And the way he uses the language to prove his point about how, the Muslims and the Hindu blocs, because of their tussle, intergroup tussle, they don't give any voice to the scheduled caste members. And it's very difficult for a scheduled caste member because they don't belong to that. He doesn't belong to any established political party, so they do not get a chance to speak in the central legislature. So, and he raises a very important problem that if they represent a particular political party, the political party might not let them have the voice of their own as a scheduled caste. And then he goes on, talking about a case of Rao Bahadur and Shivraj, who was a nominated member, a great associate of Babasaheb Ambedkar in the central legislature, who couldn't find a chance to speak in the central legislature. So there was no right to speak. And Babasaheb Ambedkar, uses this term, two terms. One is the just interest of the scheduled caste. Very important term, isn't it? The interest of the scheduled caste are just because they are the third largest population block in this country, and their interests are not taken care of, and their voice is not heard in the parliament, isn't it? And they lose altogether the right to speak. So right to speak is a very important right. Right to talk about one's grievances, one's problems, and one's situation is a very important right that we all should have, and our people should have in the parliament. Without that right to speak, and if you look at the case today, how many there are a lot of members of the scheduled caste. Dara, how many members of the scheduled caste in the Lok Sabha today?
That I'm not sure, sir.
Okay, so it's about 180 or something.
Okay.
We can find a correct number. But how many of them speak for the community?
Yes.
Isn't it? Because they are controlled by what is called the political whip. So
Yes.
the political party decides whether they should speak or not, and what they should speak in the parliament. It's a complete mockery of the democratic system, right?
Right.
So we begin to get an idea as to what is happening. That when your voice is taken away, you have no right to speak about your own people. You have no right to speak about the problems facing this 1/3 of the population block of this country. And in the last paragraph number 7, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, after making his case, he summarizes it very beautifully that there is a need to increase the representation of the scheduled caste in the central legislature. Who cannot agree with this if you present your case like this, isn't it? So this is it. And if the government didn't agree, then what we have to do? We have to have a political lobby. We have to have a political voice. We have to have the political parties which can implement it. we can have a political voice. In other words, we have to go for the political advocacy, which Babasaheb Ambedkar went ahead in the history. So I think we will stop here for today. If there is any comment by anybody, and I think I would like to just take your call as to what you think about this. We will have a discussion in the class for some time, maybe 5-10 minutes about how do you feel about this reading, right? So can you close the screen and share? Okay. So anybody would like to share anything on what we have studied so far? Any comments? Or is it helpful? Is this reading helpful?
Yes, sir, very helpful.
Okay, Dhara, good. What about other people?
Hi, sir.
Sunny.
Yeah. Hello. Is my voice audible?
Yeah, Sunny. Yeah, please.
Yeah, so I believe it's my first class. So I believe I was there in the previous sessions with Nikhil, but so after a while I have joined today. So yeah, I think the session was indeed good.
Good, Sunny. Good. Anybody would like to say anything? Yes.
Mangesh ji, good evening.
Good evening.
This is Raju from Karnataka.
Yeah.
So for the first time, I joined this Zoom meet.
Yeah.
So I must appreciate your initiative. So you have brought out a very good spirit of reading Ambedkar to the present generation.
Yeah.
So we must also learn that there is a methodology in Babasaheb Ambedkar's writings, which can be useful in our further arguments.
Yeah.
So this is how we can go on educate our students or youth to become very much logical in their presentations.
Yeah.
So this is how we are going to enlighten their pursuits.
Yeah. Good.
I must appreciate your initiative. This is
It's
the
all
first
teamwork.
time.
We have our long standing people like Nikhil particularly has been very active.
Yeah.
They are doing wonderful work.
Yeah. I must appreciate your team effort.
Good teamwork. Yeah.
So let us do it hereafter. I will also be there with you.
Please.
I'll join hands right with you.
Please.
So we will take up. So
Thank
it is what I think is we can hold at least 1 or 2 workshops, offline workshops for the select members invited from.
Raju sir, we can do that. We can have a discussion in the group. If you can focus on what we are, reading today. So we can take these ideas, whatever we are talking about. We will take it further, and there is a small correction. Shailesh Kumar has said that there are 84 MPs in the parliament. So you imagine that we know parliament.
I can understand the magnitude of the representation given today.
Yeah.
But at the same time, how these people are very much unable to speak out. How they have been failed.
We have to find many solutions, Raju sir.
Yeah, of course.
Isn't it?
So it is very much pathetic because we have huge representation, but they are not able to speak. They are not able to voice the issues of the people.
Because technically they do not have the right to speak.
Yeah. They have been controlled. They have been made to be silent.
Yeah. Very good, Raju sir.
Yeah.
He has been trying to speak. Shilpi?
Hello, sir. I hope you're doing well.
Good.
I just had a question. I was looking at the data. the composition in Central Assembly. I was just curious to know that like this is a very of course very detailed data in front of us, but I was just curious to know because when we read and when we go back in the archives, I have seen picture or two of women parliaments, women who were the member of Central Assembly. So, like, is there any possibility where we can learn more about
I'm
this?
sure. I'm sure. You have to go in the old archives, Shilpi.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm sure there is a data available which shows who are the nominated members, who were the elected members, isn't it?
Okay.
So I think that's a good topic for if you want to pursue it, you can go in the National Archives. I think they will be available online. So that's a little assignment for you to
Yes,
see
sir,
how
of course.
many women were there and how many.
Yes, because like there is completely this one vacant seat for elected members and then non-nominated official members. But I am certain the women who were sitting there at that time in the parliament were also from the communities which are overrepresented, obviously. So just wanted to figure out
So that
which
will be a
women.
wonderful way to research. And I think you can go back to the
Yes.
1921 and collect all the data about central.
This one is from 1940s, right?
Yeah,
This table,
1942. Yeah, this is 1940. Yeah.
the census.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir. Perfect.
So that's an assignment for you, Shilpi. Don't forget. We'll ask you
Oh,
next time.
yes.
Okay.
Okay, sir. Yes, sure.
Good. Anyone?
Mangesh?
Shailesh?
Yeah, yes. I think it's a very wonderful initiative, Mangesh. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Because from policy analysis point of view, I think we need this kind of a reading. And the way you were explaining, having such a deep meaning of the way Babasaheb has articulated in a language and the terms and the words that he's been using. I think for the first time, I could actually pay attention very carefully at those terms and words that Babasaheb is using and how they have such a deep context that he's trying to articulate from that point of view.
Yeah.
So I think it is very enriching. I will certainly be very benefited, and all of us will be actually. And I must congratulate you and thank you for such a wonderful kind of exercise undertaken. Thank you so much.
I think there is a lot which we can dig into Babasaheb's writings and speeches. It's like a treasure that Babasaheb Ambedkar has handed over to us, and it's up to us what use we make, isn't it? And I was
Sure.
when I read it first time, I was very thrilled to see the clear thinking, the analysis, the data, and the conclusions, and the language, and the suggestions as to what the government should do. I think we need these tools today, and
Definitely.
build our own policy analysis lab, so that we can have our own policy papers, policy memos submitted to not only the central government, but state government, local government, whatever level, environmental policy, social policy, scientific policy, whatever, all domains. So thank you, Shailesh sir. Thank you. So
Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother. Anything else? If not, then what we will do, we'll meet next time. And I would request you to go through whatever I have shared in the group, those two books, very important. And I find this a book by Eugene Bardach, very important book, very short book, but it gives us a concise idea as to how we can go for a policy analysis. And then Policy Paradox is another wonderful book that I think we should be handy to us and reading through it. And I request you to read it, this Babasaheb's policy memo again and again, so that we begin to have that kind of thinking style which Babasaheb Ambedkar had developed. So thank you all, and we will meet next time, 5 o'clock next Sunday. Thank you. Jai Bhim to all. And thank you, Nikhil, for in particular for taking it today. You really
Thank
not well.
yeah.
Thank you, Nikhil.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Jai Bhim to all. I would also suggest that those who have joined the session for the first time, and wherever you have got this meeting link from, you can like message me and you can be part of the virtual reading WhatsApp group where we post like the exact uh, session links and everything. So next time you don't have to hassle and you can directly join by checking the message. So do let me know if you want to be part of the virtual reading WhatsApp group.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, that was the thing I wanted to ask. Next meeting, how can we connect again? Yeah, thank you so much, Nikhil. Thank you for
Yes, yes.
this.
So you can get in touch with wherever
Yeah.
you can
I'll-
send. I will
Sure,
have you in the group. Thank you, Suhas.
Yeah, so this was the first meeting, sir. I just
No,
wanted
it has
to
been
ask.
going on for last 3 years. We have been reading a lot of
Oh, that's
different
great.
things, and
It's
this is for the
amazing.
first time we are making it policy oriented.
Yeah, right. I know that. Thank you, sir. Thank you. It was very wonderful, like enriching, totally enriching.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.